The first really big cultural hurdle: how to create brand awareness in more than 80 countries across 5 continents, covering all creeds and colours, while being efficient, cost-effective, and espousing the essence of this new brand. What would you do? You can't really use words because words need to be translated and have different meanings, and the risk of translation and getting things wrong is huge. You certainly can't use stories because stories are deeply embedded in local culture. So a story that's relevant to an Inuit wouldn't necessarily be relevant to a Namibian. You might think, well, let's reference the predecessor brands and trade on their history. But of course, that's looking backwards, and we want to look forwards. We might say, well, let's drive everything into the products, checkbooks, credit cards, whatever it might be. But there we will be diluting focus across a range of 20, 30, 40 different products, which would take away brand recognition. What we needed was a culture-neutral, language-agnostic, recognizable and ownable device that would be created or produced once, but would be usable everywhere. And that's a really, really difficult thing to get right. I take you back to 1657, where a French mathematician called Pascal wrote to an acquaintance, "I'm sorry I've written you a long letter. I didn't have time to write you a short one." In creating this global branding campaign, we promised our client the short letter. It had to be designed to be acultural, both for economies of scale and for simplicity of message. It had to cut through language barriers, cut across geography, history, sector, and products to provide very simple recognition. So we wanted to make sure that the hexagon in people's minds equals the bank. Our aim was to communicate the spirit and substance of HSBC in the most concise way possible to everyone, whatever language or culture. HSBC pride themselves on being straight talkers with an aversion to jargon or unnecessary complexity. The real genius here came from our global creative director at the time, a man called Adrian Holmes, who devised a new language, a new advertising shorthand so concise that it didn't actually use words. It was based purely on symbols. It was really clear. It was culturally agnostic. Universal symbols recognized around the world to stand for specific things, whether they were services or needs or even emotions and values. Our premise was that the HSBC logo would become another of those worldwide universal symbols to make it a universally acknowledged sign of excellence and integrity in financial services. And this is the first print ad that was produced for the new brand. Things to notice about it. Clearly, the 3 symbols are instantly recognizable all over the world. There's that pretty identifiable styling. There's very low production cost. And indeed, in those days, low-cost media, because media used to cost more if you used 4-color or photographic work rather than single-color stuff. And because there's no registration issues, by that I mean production registration, we were able to be pretty broad in the choice of media. There weren't any issues about media quality or print quality using this technique. And of course what it says, if you can't read it on your screen, is that HSBC, it's a sure sign that you're dealing with a world-class financial services organization. We've been around for more than 130 years, and now we're in 79 countries and territories serving over 20 million customers. These are numbers. But it's our integrity and common sense solutions that you can truly count on. HSBC, your world of financial services. And your world of financial services was the first slogan that was used because certain board members of the bank refused to call themselves a bank. They said, we're much more than a bank. We offer investment services, we offer asset management, we offer insurance. We're not just a bank. And although we argued with them that consumer language was a bank, they insisted on being called a financial services organization. So that was the shortest form of words we could get at the time. Here's another, which may be used outside an airport or something of that sort. Plus, minus, divide, and multiply. You can start to see how the symbol is being used to ascribe attributes to the brand. Right, wrong, question, answer. We also started to apply it to different products. So here's a range of ads that related to different products. And here we're talking about insurance. So again, symbols, talking about flying, skiing, climbing. But we can insure you for all of those things. Peace, relaxation, leisure, and of course, pension. We can plan your pension for you. And here's one that's perhaps more pertinent to me, 35, 45, 55, pension. Things went pretty well with those, so we started quite early on to espouse the values of the bank through this form of communication. Happiness, peace, love, and trust. See, feel, taste, and of course, listen. Here's one that I actually wrote myself. Stormy, rainy, cloudy, sunny. And again, for use at places like airports, big symbols of international stature, New York, Paris, Sydney, and everywhere. And now I'm going to show you some films so we can see the sort of television that was used at the time.
HSBC, your world of financial services.
So very much a television interpretation of the Symbols campaign, basically a moving print ad, communicating the globality of the bank and the universal appeal of its values.
HSBC, your world of financial services.
You can see from looking at those two films that there was a common end frame, end sequence, common music, which was using a 4-note system to represent the brand. And obviously these films ran all over the world. There were 1 or 2 countries where there was a particular challenge, and we wanted to try and get the brand name reinforced as quickly as possible. One of those markets was the UK. So the film that I'll show you now was a particular film for the UK about the name change.
If you want a personal approach to your finances, there are 4 letters worth looking out for.
H.
H.
B. C.
H. S. B. C. H.
S.
B. C. H.
S.
B. C. HSBC. The new name for Midland Bank.
So apologies for the quality of some of those transcripts. Technology wasn't as good in those days as it is today. Because they went very well, and because research was starting to show that there were positive movements on the attributes that we wanted, we were able to move into what we called Phase 1B, where we were demonstrating much more about HSBC's responsible attitude, the way that their staff would interact with their customers. And we developed a little tactical end line there saying, our kind of person your kind of bank.
Somos incapaces de encontrar la manera de hallar un consuelo para ellos.
Esperamos, a més que la divisa tantes vegades, aquesta unió de persones, aquest autèntic formiguer humà. Our kind of person. Your kind of bank.
And the next one?
Our kind of person. Your kind of bank.
So, what are the results? Well, the overall picture was incredibly positive. The objective of doubling shareholder value over 5 years was actually met in 3 years. Internally, there was a growing pride in the brand, overcoming concerns about the loss of previous brands, which was both gratifying and motivating for us and for the staff. Importantly, the brand was well received by customers, significantly in markets where HSBC had replaced a long-standing, well-recognized brand. Brand awareness was climbing and reached acceptable levels in most key markets. In New York State, for example, prompted awareness of HSBC rose to 65%, up from 10% in January of 1999. In Singapore, it achieved 85% in December 1999, up from 32%. Favorability rankings also improved. In the UK, for instance, HSBC became rated more favorably than Midland within the first year. So I'm going to pause there. If you have any questions for me on that initial part of how that first phase was developed, please do ask when we get together face to face.